Oh. I was sure that you are the candidate. We were climbing together stairs. Is
Yes,
it?
yes.
Shreya, you are coming all the way from
Anupur right now, sir. I am trying from Anupur.
Jabalpur, Anupur.
Anupur, sir. I was in Jabalpur until December. My father got transferred, and then currently we are residing in Anupur.
So you are not preparing in Delhi. You are preparing from.
Home, sir. Yes, sir.
That's good. And you are very young. So which are the main schemes of the government you might have come across?
Sir, in MP, sir, the landmark scheme has been the Ladli Lakshmi Yojana, which also set path for the Beti Bachao Beti Padhao at the national level.
So what is the Rani Lakshmi?
Sir, the government opens an FD account in the name of the daughter whenever she is born, and until 18 years of age, the government and the parents make a contribution, and this can be withdrawn only after the girl completes 18 years of age and completes a certain minimum educational requirement until 12th standard. So it's a step towards contribution in her higher education, so that the family does not have financial restrictions. And
okay, Shree, it's the most important epic of India that we are discussing, Ramayana. And you mentioned fiction in your answer.
yes, sir.
You also talked of a book which sees Ramayana from Sita's perspective.
Yes, sir.
About 3 years ago, one essay by A.K. Ramanujan on Ramayana created a national level controversy. Are you familiar with that controversy, or what was that controversy?
Sir, I'm afraid I cannot recall.
Okay, no issues. I also noticed, was there a gap after your schooling finished and education in IIT Kanpur began?
No, sir. My program was an integrated BS-MS program, and it took 5 years. So
and you
I
started soon after, you started in
immediately
2015.
after, sir. Yes, sir.
Because here your record says that you finished both your BS and MS in 2020.
Yes, sir.
So that creates a confusion as to how could you finish both degrees in same year. Obviously, you finished your BS much earlier. IIT Kanpur, we all understand, is extremely prestigious. There are occasions it stands best among IITs. So you had a very coveted seat where you worked on economic sciences. If we go back before the pandemic has unleashed all kinds of difficulties. Tell me 2 or 3 structural challenges that Indian economy was facing before we went into pandemic.
So the first challenge that we have been facing since the 1991 reforms is the jobless growth. The service sector growth has low employment elasticity. Second is, sir, we have a demand-led growth model, and even before the pandemic set in, we were seeing a slowdown in the demand, and that is second factor. And third is, sir, we don't.
Let me reiterate my question. You are answering correctly, but perhaps you didn't hear me. I'm not asking what are the challenges for economic policy. I'm talking of structural challenges of Indian economy.
Sir, in terms of structure, we are an agricultural economy. A large population of our economy is dependent on agriculture, and that generates low employment and low remuneration as well. Second is, sir, the manufacturing sector has been stagnant at around 29% for several decades now, and that is also creating challenges in terms of employment growth and quality of employment as well, sir.
India is now being projected even by IMF 8+% growth rate. What is your understanding? You think we are going to hit 8% growth rate for this year?
Sir, on this I'd like to defer to the expert economists.
Indian officials are claiming even more. I'm giving you a conservative figure.
Yes.
You think India is going to grow at 8% or more?
Sir, the economic survey, when pointing out a even more optimistic outlook for growth, assumed that the oil prices would remain at $75 per barrel. But given the Russia-Ukraine crisis,
yes, My last question, since we discussed, you mentioned Russia, you mentioned oil prices. India buys enormous amounts of oil from outside, 85%. And Russia is an old friend. Russia will be willing to sell us as much as possible on discount up to 30%. But India apparently is still very restrained. India is not going whole hog in buying as much as possible. Tell me again structural reasons why India is not able to buy unlimited oil.
Sir, first is because of the high sulfur content of Russian oil. Our refineries and our usage is more towards the low sulfur content oil.
Yes.
And second is, sir, the large distance from Russia to India. That would increase the
Distance doesn't matter, but I'll take it. Okay.
transportation.
Structural.
Sure.
How do we procure, the mechanisms of procuring?
Sir, currently we have a challenge of payments as well. There are sanctions on Russian banks,
Rupee
and
ruble
rupee
swap
rate
is
is
being
being
tried.
negotiated.
And it's also difficult because our systems of procurements are complex because of ensuring transparency, accountability. So you suddenly can't switch sides and bargain, just because two political leaders are friends. I'm happy you answered nicely because of structural issues I was asking. That's a good understanding of economics. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
How are you, Shreya?
So I'm right.
Are you feeling fine?
Yes, ma'am.
Confident?
Yes,
Is
ma'am.
this your picture? It doesn't look like it's your photo on the graph.
Ma'am, that camera person was. He made me into an expression that I don't recognize on my face. So
Okay. You have a very impressive DAF.
thank you.
It's a very nice CGPA scores. You have scored 10 out of 10 everywhere. Do you know who is Rakesh Gangwal? He's an alumni of IIT Kanpur.
Yes, ma'am. He's the co-founder of Indigo, and recently he made a 100 crore grant for setting up an medical science and technology institute in IIT Kanpur.
Right. So you also were in Kishore Vigyanik Protsahan Yojana, right? So when we compare the research outcomes of India, when the funding into the research, India is at a middle ground. It's not even at par with many developed countries, and government's percentage of budget into research and development is also very low. So do you think the research and development in India should be on the funding of private organizations or the individuals? Do you think government should do a little more about the research and the quality of research in India also?
And the government expenditure, as you said, is below 1% of GDP in India. So that is a matter of concern. However, comparative analysis with other countries shows that our private sector participation in research is very low. In countries like USA, a large part of expenditure, more than half of the research expenditure, in fact, is taken up by the corporate sector for its innovation and development. So the private sector does have an important role to play. That being said, the government sector must facilitate this research environment in the country, and only then can the private sector be attracted for making more research institutions and doing their research within the border rather than outsourcing it to other nations.
Can you recall some recent examples where the government has pushed private sector into the research? Some elite research, I would call. Maybe in the field of space, ISRO, if you can remember something.
We are encouraging private sector participation with collaboration with ISRO, but I'm afraid I can't.
Electronics.
I can't recall the name. Sorry, sir.
Okay, no problem. You also mentioned The Forest of Enchantment. Surprisingly, it is one of my favorite book also. Have you read Palace of Illusion of
Yes.
Chitra Banerjee?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you find some relevance into these two books?
Relevance for 21st century women?
Whatever the storytelling of Chitra's was. both of the books are from a woman's perspective. One is from Sita's perspective and one is from the Draupadi's perspective. As you mentioned, that we generally read books from a male perspective. Even we read Ramayana or Mahabharata, we don't know the internal stories, but Chitra tried to tell these internal stories. But when you read and compare, can you find some relevance into these two storybooks?
How these two stories are related with each other, ma'am?
Not historically related, but the outcome of that. Like I asked you, like sir asked you, what did you learn from Forest of Enchantment? So what did you learn from the Palace of Illusion also? Was you learning the same? The perspective of Sita and Draupadi was different?
It was very different, ma'am. In case of the Sita's perspective in the book, it was more of, I felt it was more conferring with the traditional notions of a woman, whereas Draupadi was more, what should I say, she had a very different perspective. Sita was all a good character. She was complying with the norms, more or less, even if she disagreed within herself. However, Draupadi had a different notion, because the origin story of Draupadi that is related
Was it not good?
It was good, ma'am. It is different. It is not bad, but it is different. And she says that, Draupadi says that it's not just, women are not just good. They have both sides within themselves as well. There are several instances where she specifically mentions these things, that we often have a habit of painting women as goddesses. They are not just goddesses, they are also human beings. They have both tendencies of good and bad within them, just as the male population has. So that was a difference that I noticed between the two books.
Okay. There is a lot into that. We'll discuss it after your interview. Maybe you can read about these two. There's a very different perspective, but there's also a lot of similarities between how the story was told. So just read about that. Have you read Little Women also?
Yes, ma'am. I read that a while ago. But
Okay. My last question to you is, what do you seek in life? What is happiness to you?
for me, happiness is satisfaction with whatever I do, be it my personal life or my professional life. So in terms of professional life, when I feel that I'm making an impact, I think this will give me the highest amount of satisfaction.
Okay. Shashi, you have worked with research intern with the RBI and the other sectors. So when in terms of if we have to develop, or I'll say the promotion of the economic growth of the country, which policy is important for that?
The structural reform policy, along with the support for vulnerable sections, it has also been outlined in the
Majoritively, suppose I'm talking about the RBI policies now. Take about that. So in terms of the RBI policies, now I have to look into the country's development. I'm taking that development in the promotion of the economic development. I'm using the term economic development. So in the terms of economic development, what kind of policies are important?
Ma'am, from the perspective of RBI, what is most important has been the monetary transmission. They are working towards improving that. And because that is the only way that the policy that are taken at the level of the central bank, they have the greatest impact at the ground level.
Okay. How many kinds of monetary policies are there?
Ma'am, there are three major categories. Basically, three stances are there. The categories are two: expansionary and
no issues. Okay, so you come from Madhya Pradesh. You have stayed in Madhya Pradesh. How many tribes are there in Madhya Pradesh? Tribal area?
Yes, ma'am. I'm afraid I can't recall.
Okay, not all. Any one or two names.
There are the Bheels, the Gonds, and I think Saharia tribe is also a PVTG from Madhya Pradesh.
Okay. We say Madhya Pradesh is blooming in agriculture since starting. So there's a concept called feminization of agriculture. What do you understand by that word? Feminization in agriculture, sorry.
Feminization of agriculture has been witnessed in the recent decades. This is when the male population of a region migrates outside to find seasonal work. the women are left back in the villages and they tend to the agricultural work. And this phenomenon is known as the feminization.
Is it applicable in Madhya Pradesh? Or you have stayed in Singrauli or Jabalpur somewhere, I've seen. So in that district somewhere.
Singrauli district had more of a dependence on coal mining and associated jobs. So agriculture, I have not been first-hand witness to what is going on in agriculture in Singrauli. In Jabalpur, male population does remain there, and it's more of a collaborative effort between men and women in agriculture.
Okay. So you come from Singrauli, you just mentioned about coal. There have been coal crisis in the country, power crisis in the country. What are the reasons for that?
Ma'am, the current power crisis is because during the COVID-19 pandemic, the production was slowed down for slowing down spread of the virus, and this has now we are gradually expanding the production again to the previous levels, but we are also facing a demand side spike because of summer and the rapid onset of economic activities as well as the pandemic recedes. So this demand supply combination has led to a power shortage.
So according to you, what I understand is that these crises are happening after the COVID, not before that.
The current crisis has major impact.
So is there a relation between before COVID and after COVID crisis?
Before COVID as well, I did read reports on the decreasing productivity of Coal India Limited. Their production of coal was decreasing even before the pandemic as well. So,
okay, thank you.
Good morning, Shreya.
Good morning, sir.
Your father is in banking industry.
Yes, sir.
And you just talked about increasing the employment, issue of increasing the employment as well.
Yes, sir.
And government is doing bank mergers.
Yes, sir.
So don't you think merger of these banks is creating less employment opportunities for the citizens, where it is so much required that government should come up with employment? So what is your opinion on this? Is it right, bank mergers?
Sir, I think the primary consideration for bank mergers must be the effectiveness of the banking sector rather than employment generation. That being said, employment within the banking sector does reduce to an extent because of the rationalization of branches that is occurring. However, it also has a spillover effect into other sectors. When the banking sector is more efficient, the credit dispersal would be more efficient, and this would lead to employment generation activities in other sectors as well.
But then government is also doing strategic disinvestment. How would you relate this to your answer?
Sir, government is not the sole employment generator in the nation. We are moving from a job-seeking nation to a job-creating nation.
Good.
And in that sense, sir, government can surely rationalize its expenditure so that it is used in the most effective ways, and the expenditure that is set aside after these rationalizations that can be used in more effective ways for employment generation from the side of the population themselves.
So what is the ground reality? What you learned from your father at the ground level, the employers, the people who are working in the banking industry, was there any some kind of fear in their minds with respect to these strong decisions by the government?
So they are public servants. They are not afraid of whatever is asked of them. They follow it effectively. And banks, I have witnessed that they have orientation programs time to time. So when the new schemes and new policies are dictated from the side of the government, the banks rapidly upskill their employees so that they have the capacity to deliver on the demands.
Good. So we are into Industrial Revolution 4 now.
Yes.
Yes, do you agree?
Yes.
So what is your opinion? Did we miss 1, 2 and 3 Industrial Revolution? India.
Sir, I don't think we missed, but it was rather that we were catching up in those 3 rounds of the Industrial Revolution. However, in the case of Industrial Revolution 4.0, we are at the leading edge because of our speciality in the services sector and our high skills in the
but we are not good with respect to the talent pool required for AI, Internet of Things, 5G technology. We are still looking forward for the outside countries companies should come in India and then work for 5G technology. So then how can we take a leap in Industrial Revolution 4.0? We'll still lag or catch up.
Sir, I am more optimistic towards our nation's capabilities. We are looking for others to invest here because innovation takes a lot of expenditure, and as we discussed earlier, private sector as well as government sector has been lacking on expenditure on innovation in our country. However, the talent pool is there because our own talent pool. Recently, I read a report in the US. A major contribution by non-US university students has been towards unicorn in the leading emerging technologies sectors. So we do have the talent pool. It's just that it is not yet working for the best of us, and we are working towards getting that.
Okay, let's come to another topic. With respect to care economy, what is your opinion? Because recently, International Labour Organization has given in its report that care economy should be there for the gender biasness or gender gap should be filled. So what is your opinion on care economy and why India is facing some challenges with respect to this, if implemented?
So the care economy is basically the unpaid and mostly invisible care work that is generally done by the female population in most countries, not just India. And recently there have been proposals to pay, to have remuneration for this from the side of government itself, so that it is accounted for in the GDP as well. The major concern is, again, its invisibility, sir, because we are not sure how many hours. There are proxy surveys, however, we do not have exact data.
If implemented in India, what challenges India will face? Simple.
So
3 points, please.
We don't have the adequate data for implementing, for paying. Second would be, sir, basically it's invisible nature only. I can't recall more.
Okay, no problem. You talked about mythological books. So you have read about Amish Tripathi as well?
Sir, I've read his Shiva trilogy.
Okay, and with respect to Ramayana also he's written?
So that I'm waiting for the last 2 books to come in.
So don't you think such writers are distorting the facts and portraying these topics in their own style for their personal achievement, keeping these mythological things in stake? What do you think?
Sir, my perspective on mythology is that it tells stories that are required by the society at that point of time. Since the society has evolved a lot from the time the original Ramayana and Mahabharata were told, it is also time that we retell the stories. And besides the fact of distortion, sir, Ramayana has multiple versions, even the Valmiki, there is the Kadamba Ramayana.
But what you read,
yes,
you yourself agreed that the character is shown weak somewhere, where society was putting pressure on the character. And don't you think the mythology being followed by many women, they themselves are seeing the person they are preaching as weak and pressed by the society? So how can the woman will empower themselves when their goddess herself is oppressed by the society?
Sir, in Chitra Banerjee's story, she is not completely oppressed. She has always had the choice, especially talking of Sita, and she chose to marry Ram in the perspective that.
My question is with respect to the common people, common women who are preaching such goddess. Then why writing such things?
Sir,
when sir has already mentioned that not explicitly mentioned in the original text somewhere.
Sir, my understanding is that through the story, the author has shown that Sita exercises her agency at the end, and this inspiration can help ordinary women as well to express their agency.
Okay, last question to you. You mentioned you want to be the asset of the country.
Yes.
I thought bureaucrats are the servants of the country. What is your opinion then? Assets or servants?
So we serve the nation, but the impact that we make is an asset towards the country.
Very good. Thank you so much, sir.
Overall, I like your calm and cool and smile and your presence in the room. Most of answers are very accurate and rather mature answers. But let me say a few things to you which could help you. If you can escape bringing in Ramayana into the discussion, think of another book. Because it's too much. Every board member will have a view on the subject. And you could be pushed into
everybody has read Ramayana.
That's a very subjective view which comes from Ramayana.
And you don't want your interview to be, half of it devoted to Ramayana. You don't want that to happen because that's not going to get you a score. It's a very subjective, very hotly debated. You don't know who's on the board and what is his view.
So also Draupadi.
Think of, this is my suggestion, ultimately be yourself. Even our suggestions, you pick and choose what you want. So be yourself. Another suggestion I may have, my ladies colleagues will correct me, to reflect a little mature look if you want to carry a dupatta with them. Another thing I wanted to suggest also was, if you are getting into any negative energy with any board member at any time, try to exit that because there's only 30 minutes. Minimize that period. And easiest way is to, for example, say, I'll have to read more on it. Say that with a smile. Instead of saying, I don't know, say, I will have to read, go back and check more on this. And when you say that with a smile, you are very good at keeping the smile. When you say that with smile, the negative answer looks like something positive in that.
Yeah, lady.
And your age is your asset. You have a very honest appearance is your asset. You are apparently in this interaction appearing to be a well-read person. You have thought through issues. So these are a few of my suggestions. You were at CSH, some questions could come on that. What was your work there? Did you do a project there? What was that project there? That could be another issue. Every letter written, every word in your application could lead to a question. Malviya Nagar, then about Malviya ji, who was Madan Mohan Malviya. You never know what kind of questions could come. So my last point, anticipate questions. Look at your application and anticipate what kind of questions will come your way. That will automatically prepare you for good answers. I am pretty hopeful about your name in the list in the initial ones.
Shreya, as sir said, you have a very charming, soothing, calm personality. You're keeping a smile. Even if you know you do not know answer, you're just very composed, which is a very good quality. There are 1-2 things which I have noticed. When you finish a sentence, you finish it very blurry. Like you do not completely finish your sentence as you have started it. End your sentence as you have started it with the same pace and energy. As I said, your DAF is very impressive, and it would be expected that you know good points about the economy of India, as sir has also asked so many questions, and your hobbies also. So just try to collect as many questions as you think they can ask on the economy point and consolidate your thoughts. Like, you know the answer, but what I feel, it's yet not that consolidated. You can just simply pinpoint 1, 2, 3, 4. This should be your preparation, and you have sufficient amount of time. You have very good positive energy, and I also think that you will score very well. Just utilize your last few days very well. So all the very best.
Shreya, I would like to say you are a very good candidate. You have very much good potential to get success tomorrow. The point here is what ma'am said is, when I asked you a question regarding 3 points, there you could not articulate the answer. However, with respect to the paragraph writing, you started well, and then you have an introduction and then the description. Try to minimize it. Okay, you can expect questions from RBI policy, since you have mentioned winning RBI policy challenge. Now, the word RBI policy is itself opens up a lot of questions. Be prepared. The crisis is going on in neighboring countries. Be prepared with respect to that topic. Writing poetry, short stories. We have not asked questions regarding short stories. Focus on that area. Apart from that, there can be other questions related to economy, which is in current news. Energy, when energy is, the question came from energy. Renewable energy is another area or domain the questions can go to. So stay positive. You did answer some questions very well, particularly the last one where you both as an asset and servant. That was a very good answer. So good wishes to you from our end.